before facing Kaido. This was the battle where Luffy truly felt the weight of the new world. His opponent was stronger, faster, and possessed all three types of haki far more refined than his own. Additionally, he had greater control over his Akuma no Mi. Amid this immense power difference, Luffy had the difficult mission of stopping Charlotte Katakuri, the strongest commander of the Big Mom Pirates. But how did Luffy manage to overcome the enormous power gap between them? Stay tuned, as in this video I will tell you in detail how the battle between Luffy and Charlotte Katakuri unfolded. Luffy and his crew's main objective had already been achieved. They convinced Sanji to return to the crew, disrupted his wedding, and saved the Vinsmokes. However, there was still one thing left: escaping from Whole Cake. The problem was that this wouldn't be easy. Not only was Big Mom intensely furious because they had ruined her party, but all her children were also angered by the Straw Hats' actions. One of these children was Katakuri, who relentlessly pursued the Straw Hats. Even though Pedro sacrificed himself to delay Perospero, Katakuri was still hot on their trail. Luffy tried to take Katakuri down on the ship, but all of his attacks passed through Katakuri's body, as if he were a Logia user. What intrigued Luffy was that he was infusing his attacks with haki, which should have been effective even against the Logia user. It was then that he realized this was one of the sweet generals, like Cracker, another son of Big Mom who had already given him a lot of trouble. Faced with an extremely powerful enemy, he decided to take the opponent elsewhere. Using his quick thinking, he inflated his arm to grab the opponent's body and then grabbed Broly, the user of the mirror fruit, and they entered the mirror dimension. Breaking the mirror through which they had entered, Luffy begins the most epic battle he would face after the time skip. And this is where the fight starts. Katakuri states that he needs to finish Luffy now, as he knows that Luffy has the potential to be a problem for Mama in the future. But today, the Straw Hat is weaker, slower, has less experience with his fruit, and his haki is inferior. Luffy doesn't care and immediately attacks Katakuri. However, he fails to land a hit and gets punched in the face. He then activates Gear Second and attacks with a jet pistol, but Katakuri counters the attack and showcases his fruit's powers, extending his arm in a manner similar to Luffy's. This is because he is the user of the Mochi Mochi no Mi, the mochi fruit, a type of sweet that Katakuri molds and manipulates in his body, allowing him to stretch, spread across the floor, and control the mochi around his body. Luffy keeps attacking. Jet pistol, rifle, bazooka, axe, all these quick attacks fail to hit Katakuri. To try winning with speed, he activates his Gatling, but Katakuri counters with his own Mochi Gatling, matching the exact moves the Straw Hat throws. In retaliation, Katakuri uses his multiple Mochi arms to attack Luffy with his Mochi Gatling. Despite seeing that his opponent is stronger, Luffy attacks again, asserting that rubber won't lose to Mochi. However, once again, the attacks don't land, and Katakuri responds with 2 kicks to the Straw Hat. Luffy decides to use Gear Third, the same move that had previously worked to bring Katakuri into the mirror dimension. But Katakuri creates arms of the same size and wins in the clash of strength. Luffy follows up with a Grizzly Magnum, the attack using both arms. However, the commander mimics the move, grabbing Luffy's body and dragging his face across the floor of the mirror dimension. Luffy tries to escape the hold with a giant foot, but Katakuri counters with an even bigger foot, crushing the Straw Hat. Everyone thought Luffy was defeated, but he still gets up and attacks with a third gear Gatling. However, once again, his opponent counters with even more strength, finishing off the Straw Hat for good. The reason Katakuri is always one step ahead is that he can see the future. With his advanced observation haki, Katakuri can see a few seconds ahead, allowing him to know exactly what his opponent will do. To make matters worse, Brûlé and her siblings find a mirror that leads directly to the Thousand Sunny, and use it to set it on fire. Luffy finds a broken mirror and contacts his crew, telling them to break all the mirrors on the ship. Nami breaks one, making it easier for Luffy to fight without further worries. At that moment, they agree to meet in 10 hours on Cacao Island. However, while he is talking to his crew through that broken shard, Katakuri starts unleashing numerous attacks on Luffy, who covers his mouth to prevent his friends from seeing that he is losing. After being beaten so much that he bleeds, he manages to hold back a smile and says that he will meet his friends later. Katakuri has proven that he is stronger than Luffy. He is relentless and has never been defeated by anyone. It is said that his back has never touched the ground. When he was born, he stood up and went to sleep on the couch. He is literally a man who looks down on the ground. He is always noble, calm, serious, a man who borders on perfection, and that is what makes him the most beloved brother of all the Charlottes. Katakuri then takes his trident, which was inside his body, and starts attacking. The fight is so easy for him that he even asks if Luffy wants a hit on the foot or the hand. The Straw Hat still dodges and tries to keep fighting, but everything remains difficult. He tries the same moves as before, but none have any effect. Katakuri even demonstrates his intangibility ability again, but in reality, it's not intangibility, it's his speed. Since he can manipulate his body in a way similar to a Logia, he uses his future vision powers to predict where the enemy will attack. This allows him to create an opening in his body before the opponent's strike lands, making it seem like intangibility. Luffy has already realized that there's nothing he's better at. He can't land a hit, and when he does, Katakuri decomposes with the mochi. The desperation is so great that he tries to steal Mogura, Katakuri's trident. This act already irritates Katakuri, but he becomes truly angry when Luffy uses his feet to touch Mogura and use it as a way to dodge Katakuri's fatal attack. This infuriates Katakuri to the point that he decides to use his most powerful technique, Awakening. With the awakening of his paramecia, he can transform the entire ground and surrounding structure into mochi. Thus, the battlefield is completely dominated by Katakuri. He can create punching fists from the ground, move the ground at will, and control the entire environment. It's then that Luffy drops the pretense and finally decides to use his most powerful form, Fourth Gear. However, it's already too late. Katakuri sees the future and hears Luffy shouting Fourth Gear, indicating that it's a superior version of his previous forms. He makes it clear that he never underestimated the Straw Hat, and that's why he's going to stop this transformation. He begins manipulating the entire surrounding environment, pushing the ground, walls, and ceiling down on his opponent, making Luffy fall under the weight. With that, Katakuri leaves the battlefield, believing the fight is over. Taking advantage of the moment as the chefs bring his snack, he creates a mochi house to eat freely, even lying on the floor and eating like a big child, something completely different from the calm and perfect persona his family believes him to be. However, Luffy wasn't defeated. In fact, he ate all the mochi that was on top of him, and even in the face of danger, he bursts out to break Katakuri's house. And yes, he destroys the house, and everyone around sees Katakuri eating, which is a disgrace to his image. And just from the shock that the chefs had upon seeing his mouth, the commander kills them. Katakuri returns to the battle filled with rage and immediately begins using his haki in an extremely offensive manner. Since his haki is stronger than his opponent's, he starts landing multiple attacks. However, something unexpected happens. Luffy dodges an attack and lands a kick to his mouth. For those who thought it was a lucky shot, Luffy dodges again from another blow. This happens because Luffy started to understand that Katakuri wasn't stronger due to his devil fruit, but because of his observation haki. Taking advantage of this momentum, we see Fourth Gear in action for the first time. Here, Luffy's speed is extremely superior to his base form. He dodges mochi attacks and lands a punch that sends Katakuri flying. Luffy lands multiple blows on Katakuri, nearly causing him to touch his back to the ground. The sweet general was still very angry, and this prevented him from focusing his haki. Therefore, he pauses, maintains his composure, and once again surpasses the opponent's attacks as if he were intangible. By setting aside his anger, he is now calm, which allows him to use his observation haki perfectly. This way, he manages to land several hits on Straw Hat, something even Doflamingo couldn't do. Luffy tries to attack again, but the issue is that Katakuri's awakening gives him an overwhelming advantage, especially since he dominates the entire battlefield with it. To make things worse, the 10-minute time limit for Fourth Gear has expired. Luffy is unable to use haki for more than 10 minutes, which signals the end of the battle. But in the middle of his retreat, Luffy finds something valuable, none other than Charlotte Brûlée, the owner of this mirrored dimension. Luffy grabs her and escapes from the mirrored dimension, leaving Katakuri trapped inside. The worst part is that he lands on the exact island where Big Mom is enraged due to her hunger pangs. He runs not only from Mama but also from her many children. They move through various mirrors and pass through several islands of whole cake. During this time, Luffy stops and starts analyzing how he could defeat his opponent. He remembers his training with Rayleigh, where his mentor made it clear that the stronger the opponent, the stronger his abilities would become, and this applies especially to his own observation haki. And then the question arises, could I also see seconds into the future? After 10 minutes, he returns to the fight, now ready to use haki again. He tries to attack, but the blows are once again ineffective. When Katakuri attacks, Luffy simply pauses and remains calm, just like Katakuri, in order to try to see into the future. The first attempts fail and he takes the attacks head on. Mochi Slap, Mochi Gatling, Donut Blades, all these attacks are delivered while Straw Hat tries to learn how to see into the future. But unfortunately, all the attempts are failures. Here we have characters who will be important in this battle. Charlotte Flampe, along with Katakuri's fan club, says that the battle is taking too long and decides to help her brother finish the fight once and for all. While she devises a way to assist, Luffy is evolving. He starts to understand that every attack carries an intent that makes the perception of his haki clearer, and so he progresses slowly until he can see a little bit into the future. This allows him to dodge some of Katakuri's attacks, which leaves the commander incredulous upon seeing that Straw Hat is learning to see the future. Even though he still takes some hits, Luffy maintains this strategy as each dodge sharpens his haki further. But suddenly, Katakuri charges to attack with his trident. This strike could have been easily avoided, but Luffy slips and takes the hit, which tears part of the side of his abdomen. Katakuri gets angry upon seeing this because he was beginning to enjoy the fight, but then he realizes that Luffy is only weakened because his sister shot him. Kata walks toward her, while she thinks that her perfect brother would thank her for helping, but quite the opposite happens. He abandons his entire way of life, cuts the side of his abdomen right in front of her, reveals his mouth, and ceases to be the calm and serious man, turning into an angry man who yells at his sister, telling her not to interfere in the battle between two men. Even with everyone around laughing at him and mocking his mouth, he only cares about Luffy. The two just stare at each other and clash for the first time with the pressure of Conqueror's haki. This pressure is so intense that everyone around falls to the ground. Now that his abdomen is pierced, the battle is balanced. They charge at each other and land a hit to the face. The fight becomes much more even than before. Although Luffy is progressing throughout the battle, he still cannot land attacks as powerful as Katakuri's and also cannot dodge all of them. After taking a lot of hits, Luffy says he has one last trick. He blows air into his muscles and uses fourth gear. However, it is not his Boundman form, but Snake Man. Snake Man is a form of Luffy in which he maintains his standard body but becomes able to use his rubber powers differently. And to show the difference, with his very first punch, he delivers a blow that appears simple as Katakuri manages to dodge it easily. But to his surprise, the same fist he had dodged comes back and hits him in the face. Essentially, Snake Man, besides being faster, allows Straw Hat to change the direction of his attacks in a linear manner. This creates difficulties even for Katakuri, as the attacks are so fast that he doesn't have the time or perception to foresee the outcome of these strikes. Luffy finally manages to corner his opponent in battle, to the point where Katakuri turns into a donut to dodge. In the end, he lands a hit on Snake Man. Additionally, the mochi sticks to Straw Hat's skin, preventing him from escaping. Thus, Katakuri slams Straw Hat's body into the floor, creating a massive hole in the ground. Luffy still returns to the fight, and they continue exchanging punches, each landing hits on the other's face. In the midst of this exchange, Katakuri unleashes a flaming attack that sends both of them flying back from the impact of the explosion. To counterattack, an absurdly fast barrage of punches comes at Katakuri, who manages to dodge them all thanks to his body manipulation. In the end, he lands a kick to Luffy's face, sending him flying. The battle is coming to an end, and Luffy is at his limit, but that clearly doesn't make him give up, and at the edge of their strength, they prepare for the final strike. Katakuri transforms into a donut again and rises to the sky to gain momentum as he forms his spiked ball. Meanwhile, Luffy tries to land a punch before being hit. In the end, Luffy strikes Katakuri's stomach while Katakuri hits Straw Hat's head. Luffy falls to the ground, losing his fourth gear, while Katakuri falls face down on the floor. After a few minutes, Luffy wakes up and sees Katakuri in front of him, who simply asks if Straw Hat will return someday to face Big Mom. And yes, he will, because he will become the king of the pirates. After these words, Katakuri collapses, conceding victory to Straw Hat. Katakuri was no longer the same as when the battle began. He valued his title of Perfect Brother and was ashamed of being seen eating, especially because of his mouth. He was afraid to be who he truly was, but thanks to Luffy, he allowed himself to change. He allowed himself to show the world who he really was, just to have an honorable fight against someone who kept standing up even after taking more than 85% of the hits in the battle. And that is the brilliance of the battle between Luffy and Katakuri, the perfect warrior who had never been defeated, yielding to a young pirate with the power to make those around him submit for him. Besides this one, I've summarized countless other battles, so be sure to subscribe and activate the notification bell, as I'll always be posting battle summaries and curiosities like these for you. It will be a pleasure to have you with us in these videos. Thank you very much for your attention, a big hug, and see you next time.